Welcome back to the Legacy Project podcast, the space where life stories become legacies and everyday reflection becomes timeless wisdom. I'm your host, Don Fessenden, and I'm excited to introduce someone new who will be joining us from now on. Harper, our thoughtful and curious intern, who will be asking the kinds of questions many of you are probably thinking as you listen. Welcome to the podcast, Harper.
Thanks so much, Don. I'm really honored to be part of this project. I'm here to learn and to help listeners like me feel a little less alone as they go through their own storytelling journey.
Exactly. And Harper is going to be chiming in with questions, reflections, and insights as we go. Because storytelling isn't just about looking back, it's about growing forward. Which brings us to today's episode, how to forgive yourself in your story. Many people struggle with one question as they begin telling their story. How do I write about the mistakes I've made, the regrets, the shame, the parts I'm not proud of? Harper, let me ask you, what comes to mind when you think of telling the whole truth in a legacy story?
I think it's scary. Like, if I admit the things I regret, will it make the rest of my story feel less valuable?
And that's such a common fear. But here's the truth. Your story doesn't lose value when you're honest. It gains it. Self-forgiveness isn't about pretending you were perfect. It's about showing that you were human. You grew and you learned. By including your mistakes and how you found grace for yourself, you model resilience. You give others permission to forgive themselves too. Forgiveness begins by naming what you're still holding on to. That could be a broken relationship, a missed opportunity, a decision you now see differently. Ask yourself, what part of my story still makes me wince? What would I tell a friend who went through this same thing? What am I ready to release so it doesn't define me anymore?
I really like that idea of talking to yourself the way you talk to a friend. We're often so much more compassionate to others than we are to ourselves.
Exactly. And your legacy deserves that same compassion. When you're ready to write about a moment that requires self-forgiveness, start with the facts. Tell what happened without exaggeration or justification. Then, this part is vital, add reflection. What have you learned? How have you changed? And if you're not ready to write it as a final story, write it as a letter to yourself. Forgiveness often begins as a quiet, private conversation.
So it's not about fixing the past, it's about understanding it.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming it with empathy and truth. And the truth is, you are not the worst thing you've ever done. You are the person who grew because of it. When you forgive yourself in your story, you create something powerful, a bridge, a way for future readers, your kids, grandkids, or even strangers, to walk through their own mistakes with a little more light. One storyteller I worked with wrote about leaving college before graduating, a choice they carried shame over for decades. But when they wrote about what they learned, how they eventually built a meaningful career, and why they finally forgave themselves, the story became a turning point, not just for them, but for their family.
I think it's really brave to admit you're still working through something, even in writing.
That's right. You don't have to wrap it up in a bow. You just have to write the truth with kindness. As we close today's episode, I encourage you to take one moment from your past, one you've struggled to forgive, and sit with it. Not to judge it, but to understand it. Write it down if you're ready. Then try writing a second version, one where you speak to yourself with empathy, not shame. That small act can begin to change everything. And Harper, thank you for joining us today. It's going to be wonderful having your voice on this journey.
Thank you, Don. I already feel like I've learned so much. I can't wait for the next episode.
If you're looking for more guidance on healing through your storytelling, check out my book, The Legacy Project, a guide to sharing your story. You'll find prompts, reflection tools, and support to help you through even the hardest parts. This is the Legacy Project podcast. Keep writing, keep forgiving, and as always, keep leaving your mark. We'll see you next time.